All right, I'm going to take you back in time. This was, let's see, when was this? I hadn't really considered the actual year. It had to have been sometime in the 1980s. I think it was about 1983 that I was working at our world headquarters. I know you know this. You've heard the story a million times. But I had just been promoted to my first job in Silent Unity, the international prayer ministry of our movement. And that was an incredible and educational and enlightening experience for me. But I remember hearing, and I really can't tell you who is the individual that told me this, but I was learning how to respond to letters and phone calls from people who were calling in for prayer support and assistance. And the person said to me, always remember, every prayer is a prayer for healing, regardless of the package that it may come in. It's a prayer for healing. It's a request to be able to see, to experience, to taste, to know wholeness. I never forgot that, and I hope that during my comments with you this morning, I'm able to help you to understand that statement more completely. Every prayer is a prayer for healing. Today, I want to share with you three different methodologies for healing. And I want to emphasize that every one of these three, number one, there are myriad pathways to healing. Every one of these three in particular is effective and legitimate in its own right. So I'm not discounting any of these methods. I've used them all. You probably have too. And they are helpful, and they are effective, and they can make a difference in your life. The first one is one that most of us are familiar with, and it's our typical go-to. That's physical healing. And physical healing has to do primarily with repairing and restoring physical matter, whether that's a body, whether that's another person, whether that's or another person's physical body, whether it's the state of your financial affairs, whether it's relationships with other people. It has to do with repairing and restoring of physical matter. Oftentimes, most especially in terms of the physical body, this involves medicine and doctors and surgery, but it could involve any number of things having to do with physical material restoration. Now, the second of these modalities that I want to share with you today has to do with mental healing. And most especially in Unity, we're rather adept at this. We're familiar with the concept of mental healing. This has to do with refinement and reprogramming. So we go from repairing and restoration in physical healing to refinement and reprogramming in mental healing. And what are we refining and reprogramming? It's the thoughts and the feelings that result from those thoughts that we're containing within our own point of awareness. In Unity, we call that the consciousness. Your personal consciousness, refining and reprogramming the thought content of consciousness in order to impact a different feeling evoked from those thoughts. And in Unity, we use tools for this process. We have denials, we have affirmations, we have positive thinking. Denials being the refusal to recognize that anything that is less than divine perfection has a power over us, save the power that we ourselves are giving it through our focus and our attention. And then affirmations. Once we make a denial, we remove from our consciousness the thought that is not in alignment with spiritual reality and spiritual perfection and wholeness, and we succeed it with a thought that we know is aligned with divine reality. So this could be as simple as sickness has no power over me. That's your denial. You're releasing the power that you yourself have assigned to physical ailments, disease, and sickness. And your affirmation would be, I am God's perfect, happy, healthy, whole child. That's the affirmation. It's important that we do the denial before the affirmation because we have to clean the house before we bring anything new into it. So denials and affirmations and positive thinking in general, that is simply to monitor the content of our minds at all times. What kinds of thoughts are we thinking? And sometimes we feel that we're victimized by negative thoughts. What else can I do? Look at this situation. Look at this pandemic. Look at these racial confrontations. On and on and on it goes, and we can easily slip into a state of feeling victimized by this. It's important to realize that we are giving our power to external circumstances, and we can instead make the decision to give our power to internal realities. Now, there are countless stories wherein Jesus healed in the New Testament, in the Gospels. One of them that's probably relatively familiar to you as I share it with you now is when Jesus communicated that in these lay a multitude of invalids, blind, lame, paralyzed. One man was there who had been ill for 38 years. Imagine that. He'd been ill for 38 years. When Jesus saw him and knew that he had been lying there a long time, what did he say to him? Do you remember what he said? The man had been laying there. He'd been ill for 38 years. You remember what Jesus said to him? Jesus said, "Oh my God, have you seen a doctor for this?" Jesus said, "Scientific evidence based on 1,000 people suffering from the same ailment indicates your chances of survival are slim to none." Jesus said, "Hey, buddy, could I interest you in a multi-level sales program featuring organically grown phytonutrients guaranteed to eliminate your fatigue and improve your libido?" Jesus said, "Exercise 3 times a week, drink 3 gallons of water a day, avoid sugar, alcohol, smoking, and sugar-free sweetener." Jesus said, "Repeat after me 10 times. I am happy, healthy, whole, and free, exactly as God created me to be." Jesus said, "Let's consider experiencing the feeling fully, tracing it to the error thought you are holding in consciousness and finding a better, truer thought with which to replace it." Do you remember Jesus saying these things in the scriptures, in the Holy Gospels? Now Jesus said instead, "Hey, look, your physical condition is a clear indication of your lack of spiritual awareness." Of course, thank God Jesus didn't say any of those things. But those things, and again, I'm not trying to dispute the effectiveness or the helpfulness of any healing modality, but that's not the way Jesus healed. If you remember, Scripture tells us, in these lay a multitude of invalids, blind, lame, paralyzed. One man was there who had been ill for 38 years. When Jesus saw him and knew that he had been lying there a long time, he said to him, "Do you want to be healed?" Such an important question. And you may say to yourself, "Well, of course I want to be healed. Nobody wants to be diseased or sick. Nobody wants to not have enough money in their bank to care for their needs. Nobody wants to have inharmony in their relationships." We really need to be brutally honest with ourselves, my friends. Well, not brutally honest. We need to be gently honest, but directly honest with ourselves, because sometimes I know for myself, and I suspect for just about everybody, if we're really honest, there may be some reason why we really don't want to be healed. So that was an important question. Because sometimes in our dis-ease, our state of dis-ease, we believe it's more comfortable there, more familiar there. So the first question has to be, do you want to be healed? And the sick man answered him, "Sir, I have no one to put me in the pool when the water is troubled, and while I am going to down the steps before me." Jesus said, and this is what Jesus really said. I'm not spoofing with you this time. He said, "Rise, take up your pallet, and walk." And at once, Scripture tells us, the man was healed. He took up his pallet and he walked. Jesus said, "Rise, take up your pallet, and walk." And this dude rose up, took up his pallet, and started walking. Now, friends, we know these stories of Jesus performing miraculous healings in the Bible, but the real question is not are they included in Holy Scriptures? The real question is, do you really believe this? Do you really believe that this guy had been laying there for 38 years and he couldn't move, and this holy man comes along and says, "Look, do you want to be healed?" And the man starts saying why he couldn't be healed. Nonetheless, he is healed. And he does as Jesus instructed. He picks up the pallet and he starts walking. Do you believe that a healing is possible in that format? It's an important question for us to ask ourselves. You see, Jesus was not a medical doctor. Jesus was not even a metaphysician. He was not a therapist. Jesus practiced spiritual healing. And always, physical and mental healing work on the level of symptoms, my friends. Again, nothing wrong with this, but at the physical and mental level, your focus, attention is upon the material realm when you're dealing with physical and mental healing. And you can tell you're in that realm because the realm of symptoms includes things like time, fixed space, fixed matter, things that are visible to you. Spiritual healing, which is what Jesus practiced, does not operate on the level of symptoms at all. It doesn't matter what the symptoms are that you're experiencing. Spiritual healing works at the level of cause. And the realm of cause is always indicated by spiritual substance, what we now today in modern science would refer to as quantum energy, that which is invisible. And spiritual healing always comes with mental and physical healing as well. They are side effects, fringe benefits. So with spiritual healing, you get all three. You get physical, you get mental, and you get spiritual restoration. Let's talk a little bit more about spiritual healing. Now we've got two other R's to consider. Spiritual healing involves recognition and realization through a consciousness of divine reality. Recognition, you've got to recognize who you really are and recognize what you're not. You're spiritual and you're not subject to the ails of materiality, physicality alone. So you recognize your spirit and then you realize it. You begin to integrate this new understanding of yourself. Awareness of one presence and one power, and that's it. Spiritual healing, and this is the keynote of what I want to share with you today. Spiritual healing is seeing self and others and life as they are in God's eyes, perfect, healthy, whole, and free. Spiritual healing is the ability to see as God sees. And in your identity as made in the image and the likeness of God, it is inevitable that you can see as God sees. You have to want this healing. Do you want to be healed? Do you want to let go of all these appearances that you've been clinging to, that you have found your identity in? Do you want to be healed and see yourself, others, and life as God sees you, others, and life? This is how Jesus healed. Jesus healed by seeing as God sees. Jesus healed by embodying the consciousness of the divine to the degree that he was, I believe, unable to perceive any lack, any sickness, any disease, any shortage or limitation of any kind. And let me tell you, were you in the presence of that being 2,000 years ago, your very presence in the presence of that individual would necessitate a healing on your part. You cannot be in the presence of somebody who is consciously fully aware of who they are, who you are, and what life is, and not have it impact you. Merely to be in the presence of this enlightened being was sufficient to bring forth the healing if it was desired, if it was requested. You see, Jesus was not under what I call the great hypnosis. The great hypnosis is this. In just a few words, here's the great hypnosis that we're all wrestling with throughout our lives. We think to ourselves, something has gone wrong here. There's a reason for concern. Something has gone wrong here. In the moment that you believe something has gone wrong here, you're stepping right out of divine vision. God does not see wrong. God does not see lack, limitation, illness, or disease. The infamous spiritual healer and prolific author Joel Goldsmith says this: spiritual, or we could call it mystical work, is not a patching up of the human scene. It is an understanding that what appeared to us as a problem is a suggestion of a selfhood apart from God, having no more substance than the water in the desert. So let's look at this, my friends. How can we step out of the compelling illusions and appearances of time and space into spiritual awareness that brings forth complete and whole restoration? Here's the steps. First of all, we look to the pages of Webster to get a definition of what healing is, and we're told it is the restoring to original purity or integrity. So what we want here is a restoration to our original purity and integrity. Charles Fillmore, the co-founder of the Unity Movement, says, the first step in all spiritual healing is to believe. And you say, well, yes, of course, I believe in spiritual healing. I believe in God. I believe Jesus performed all these miracles and that people were healed and can be healed today. It's important, though, my friends, to honor your degree of belief. Let me tell you, some of you might recall a number of years ago when we were back at 411, this was a long time ago, I couldn't make it up onto the platform on Sunday mornings without crutches. And the reason for this was that seemingly out of nowhere, my left knee stopped functioning. It just simply wouldn't hold me up any longer. So I went to an orthopedic surgeon, and the guy says to me, hey, buddy, you're so-and-so age, and you need to realize you need to schedule a knee replacement. Oh, I didn't want a knee replacement. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with knee replacements, and if it comes my way, so be it. But I just had an uneasiness. He said, in the meanwhile, take these anti-inflammatory medications. And let me tell you, I started researching anti-inflammatory medications, and I wasn't too impressed, so I thought I don't want to do this for very long. My level of belief there was that I could do something about this on the spiritual level. I had tried the physical level, going to the doctor. I began then moving into the next level, which was to examine the thoughts in my own mind and the mental healing aspects of it. And then I thought, I think I can maybe take this to the next step of spiritual healing. I can really begin to see my knee and to see my whole physical body as God would see my knee and my physical body. And I'm not proclaiming any miraculous shifts here. Something did happen inside of me. I know that I was able to dump those anti-inflammatory meds. I made a few dietary changes because I learned and was educated in different ways. And I'm telling you, I am as agile on this knee many years later, a knee that I literally couldn't walk on for weeks. It might have even been months. I can't recall exactly. I do remember that Easter Sunday I held up my crutches in the form of a cross, and I thought, that's a great way to use a crutch in a positive manner. Then again, a few years ago, I remember I was living in the shores, and it was raining outside, and I had left something on the patio that I didn't want to get wet. And so I ran out toward my pool in the backyard, and it was a slick surface. It wasn't rough. And I slipped on the surface, and I went smack down onto my forehead and cut myself, or made a nasty wound above my left eye. And I didn't think for a minute about just sitting there on the concrete in the rain saying, I can take this gaping wound and restore it through the power of spiritual realization. Do I think that's possible? Absolutely, I do. I think that's how Jesus healed. I'm just telling you, my level of belief wasn't up to that notch yet. So I raced myself off to the emergency room, got stitches, and took care of myself. You see, you have to approach your healing from the level of believability that you've established within yourself. If you feel like you need a doctor, and this is what I love about Unity, there are spiritual persuasions that will tell you, stay away from doctors. I say if you need a doctor, if you need medical attention, get it. And then you can also still work on the mental level with your thoughts and your programming, and you can also work on the spiritual level by asking to be able to see the situation as God sees it. But respond accordingly. Honor your degree of belief. And then Charles Fillmore, co-founder of Unity, goes on to say, and the next step is openness and receptivity to the stream of healing life. So important, my friends. It is possible for you and I to consciously and intentionally open ourselves to identify any resistance that might be standing in the way and open ourselves to receptivity to the stream of healing life. You see, if we're pushing and we're resisting and we're judging and we're criticizing and we're condemning, all of these things keep us from being in the free flow of spiritual healing in our lives. It has to do with relaxation, trust, non-resistance, and a simple statement issued to ourselves, I am ready and willing to be healed. You can't make that statement if you're full of fear and anxiety and trepidation about the next diagnosis. So, what am I telling you this morning? Hey, if you don't feel good and you feel guided to go see the doctor by all means. By all means, look at your diet and look at your exercise and do everything you can to improve in that arena as well. Speak affirmations of spiritual truth on a regular basis to yourself and to your world. Above all, cultivate the strongest belief you can in seeing yourself as God's perfect creation. Develop an openness and a receptivity to the healing stream of life. And then be willing to see as God sees. And you, my friend, can be just like Jesus. He told us that. All these things and greater. You can be the one who walks into the most critical and concerning of circumstances and situations. And by the very vibration, the energetic vibration of your consciousness, which is fixed on the reality of the perfection of God in all people, all circumstances, including yourself, you can begin to heal yourself and everyone that is within the sphere of your universe. It even goes beyond that. You can be a healing agent in building a new world, a new reality, a new city of one. God bless you.